Hello and welcome to another episode of Design Under Influence, a podcast by ArcIT, the company that solves technology and IT for architecture companies so our customers can do their best work. This podcast is all about educating architects, design, and engineers on the use of technology, best practices, and some of the discussions around, how to run your business better. Some guests. And today, we are going live on LinkedIn. We're going to give you this session with questions coming from the audience. And the topic we're discussing is cloud storage solutions versus on-premise or local storage solutions. We're covering things like benefits and limitations of both on-premise and cloud, and some of our recommendations on the cybersecurity side of things for both of these solutions. We're also talking about how to integrate cloud storage with your design tools. There's a lot of recommendations Boris puts out, my co-host Boris puts out in this regard, and talking about service costs versus benefits of cloud. And finally, we're sort of wrapping this up with how to map your cloud workflows for your organization, how to build a knowledge base and document processes. There's very actionable advice. This whole cast, I guess, or event or podcast is full of actionable advice. So hopefully you guys like it. If you have any questions, do check us out at getarchit.com. But without further ado, let's get into the show. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you kindly for taking your time to join our LinkedIn event. Me, Alex, him, Boris, will talk about cloud storage solutions for architects and engineering companies as well, and design companies. That all comes together. We are from a company called ArcIT. What we do is we help with IT, we solve IT, so our customers can focus on doing their best work. Cloud storage and or storage in general is a pretty big topic in the space because what? Well, because the industry is using heavy files to create models, to build buildings and whatever, shopping malls, whatever it is that you do. And for the heavy files, you require a lot of collaborators to come in, come out, and do their additions, do their checks. And we're going to talk about the various ways cloud storage can help. A lot of people thinking about going into the cloud, but it's not very clear because there's some complications and limitations we're going to talk about today. But there are also a lot of benefits. So we're going to cover those. We have clients in both on-premise and continuously using on-premise file storage, and we have customers who migrated fully into cloud. So we can talk you through what that transition looked like and what some of the pluses and minuses and how to make that decision for your organization. Boris, say hello to the fine people of LinkedIn.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, this should be a fun topic to discuss. I think a lot of people have questions about that, and we hopefully can provide all the answers to all your questions. So I do want to encourage asking questions in our chat. We'll get to those right away and try to answer them. This should be a discussion, not necessarily a presentation by us. So get your questions ready.
Although we do have lots of stuff that we are prepared for you, lots of validations on one way or another, and some of the advice and some of the recommendations. So a little bit of housekeeping, as Boris said. Please, again, my name is Alex, his name is Boris, but please feel free to send us a question as soon as the question comes up. Nancy, our beautiful marketing manager / superwoman, is sending us, copying those questions, sending us in Teams. So if you see, if you hear like a chat pop up, it's not like I'm playing games or I'm chatting with other people. It's Nancy basically getting us your questions so we can answer them live on the air. So we'll, as we go through the presentation discussion, we'll be answering questions live. All righty, let's jump right into it. It's 10:32. I think folks who are on, and let's do this thing. So let's open up this topic by talking about the two major ways files are stored. Since 1960s, 70s, computers came about, and things have changed. In the past, it's file cabinets and drawings and whatnot. Now it's different. So Boris, on-premise is more a traditional way to store files. A lot of people still use it. There's a lot of benefits to on-premise, and cloud is something that is more recent invention, and it works really, really well when it works. But there's a lot of different things that need to come together in order for that solution to be beneficial to organizations. So let's just break down on-premise versus cloud. Give us some benefits and limitations of each.
So as you mentioned, on-premise is the technology that has been around for a long time. And it means your file server that you have stored in your server room, hopefully, or it's a NAS device that basically kind of a more recent incarnation of the file server, where it's a simple, easy to set up, easy to use device, and fairly low, not as expensive as a full file server. And these are kind of the two solutions that we find in most architecture firms. Obviously, if you're a larger firm, you'll have more servers, not just a file server, and you have bigger server rooms. But having access to your files locally or on-premise is what the solution boils down to. So from that server, you share a folder or share various folders, and then you can access those folders from your computers. Multiple people can access those folders at the same time. They can work on various files. And I think the biggest advantage there is natively the Windows file server or a NAS device using SMB basically has file locking, which is important for many applications that architects use, specifically AutoCAD.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and what are some of the limitations of the on-premise having a server in your closet?
So, as we've discovered in, early 2020, when everybody had to go home and nobody could come into the office, it wasn't as easy to access those files once you're no longer in the office. So the biggest limitation is the fact that you have to have additional remote access mechanisms to be able to access your files from your home or another remote location to work remotely.
Okay, so remote access is the challenge. Anything else on-premise? How about the maintenance of the hardware itself? How the fail rate of the hardware as compared to, let's say, a fail rate of cloud? Because cloud also has issues. Like Amazon is having issues, because things are down all over the place.
Yeah, when Amazon has those issues, things can go down. But if we're taking kind of the overall risk factors, definitely the on-premise infrastructure has more risk. Well, so first things first, storing your files on-premise doesn't just mean that you buy a NAS box and you put it in the corner somewhere and you connect it to the internet and everybody walks by it and trips over it, right? You need to have, a dedicated room, or at least a dedicated kind of cage to make sure that you're putting your on-premise infrastructure in a safe place where, it's protected from, let's say, fire sprinklers, or it's protected from people accidentally knocking it down or unplugging it. Secondly, you need to make sure that it's a nice, cool place so that your device doesn't overheat and doesn't run into problems with performance or dies altogether. So those are all the things that you need to think about. Also putting that device on an uninterruptible power supply to make sure that if the power goes out, the device doesn't just die, right? And then it can't come back up. So there needs to be a graceful shutdown of those devices, and that can only be provided by an uninterruptible power supply. So you need to put additional infrastructure in place to just host your files on premise.
Right. So it's not all very as simple as throwing a server right. in a closet.
Yeah, there's also an added risk of if your office has a fire or something like that, right? If you're not backing up your files to various different locations, like either cloud or offsite, taking the backups home, then basically you can lose all of your files right then and there. So the advantage of cloud over this is that the files are not stored in any kind of physical location under your control. They're stored in a data center that has all those mechanisms already in place to prevent like power outages, to prevent fires, to prevent other damage that can happen. So it provides you with additional business continuity and disaster recovery mechanisms once you're in the cloud.
Gotcha. So what about the cloud? Let's isolate the cloud storage and talk about some of the benefits and limitations of that solution.
So as we know, there are multiple cloud storage providers out there, and this could be something as simple as your Google Drive in your Google Workspace platform, or a Microsoft OneDrive in a Microsoft platform, to something more advanced, specific platforms for architecture tools. For example, Autodesk has their own cloud called, it used to be called the BIM 360. I think their new product is called Autodesk Construction Cloud, but the premise is the same. This is a cloud solution specifically for architects. So, and specifically for people that use the Autodesk software. So I guess to differentiate between the two, a lot of people think initially that they can just utilize the regular kind of cloud, Google Cloud or the Microsoft Cloud or Dropbox, and use it with their architecture tools effectively. But the drawback here is, while you're small and you kind of have one person dedicated to one project, it's fairly easy to use some of those sharing platforms. As you grow bigger, it becomes much more difficult, because if multiple people are involved in a project, you cannot use those tools. We cannot use those tools to effectively collaborate, whether in Revit, AutoCAD, or ArchiCAD, or Vectorworks.
Okay, gotcha. What about? And by the way, guys, if you, those of you who are watching, please feel free to have any questions at any point of this presentation, of this conversation Boris and I are having. I want to touch on cybersecurity. It's been quite a significant, one of the latest threats that are growing in its vastness to any business, but architecture and engineering companies have a lot of collaborators on projects. That's even a lot more significant. And with how valuable those files are, the work can come to a halt if it gets encrypted. All that stuff is pretty terrifying. But so cybersecurity implications for on-premise versus cloud. I want to know, it's like, is there a blanket statement, one is safer than the other, or if not, can you elaborate?
Sure, Alex. Just give me 1 second. I think I have some noise going outside of my studio. I want to make sure that I take care of that real quick. That's kind of happens when you live broadcast. So give me just 1 sec.
All right. He probably has chickens in a coop. Somebody didn't close the coop, and so the chickens are out there. Is that the chicken coop?
I don't know what it was. Some people doing some construction right next door, I believe.
I thought it was a chicken coop. Anyway, cybersecurity. Let's hit that.
So cybersecurity wise, the on-premise infrastructure, if we don't need to provide remote access, may be a little more secure than the cloud infrastructure. But as soon as you enable on-premise infrastructure for remote access, then the security challenges are almost the same. You need to make sure that only those people who have access to your files, continue to have access, right? And that the bad guys can't use those same mechanisms that you're using for remote access, can get in that same way and corrupt all your files, encrypt them, and then get you to pay them the ransom. So sorry.
No, let me summarize this. So if I'm the office where everybody comes to the office 100% of the time and there's no remote access, then potentially cloud can be safer. Although there's something to be said about individuals having access, carrying around that stuff in their computers. That's all different. But like in general, you say that could be safer, but who does that? Like who's locking things now and who's coming to the office every day? If you guys are out there on a stream, let us know if you have 100% in office attendance, and you feel safe about your file server. But yeah, so as soon as remote access is open, that's when you open up the risk. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct. So, best practices needs to be observed, whether you use an on-premise files, whether you're using cloud files, strong passwords. Two-factor authentication is a must nowadays. I mean, absolutely. Making sure that your remote access is protected with two-factor authentication, whether you're using VPN or remote access gateway to remote back into your machines, those services need to have two-factor authentication on it. And then if you're storing files in the cloud, if you're in Microsoft's or Google's or Dropbox cloud, you need to have two-factor authentication on that too. And if you're in, same goes for Autodesk and ArchiCAD as well.
Gotcha. There's a question here from Brian. Brian, thank you. Question is, are what we discussing is a hybrid model of local servers that are backed up on the cloud?
Well, that would be the, I guess, optimal state. So if you must have data on premise, you want to make sure that you have backups that are local so that they're easily recoverable, but also that a copy of a backup is then backed up to a cloud, right? So some sort of storage solution that can accept the copy of your backups in the cloud, or at the very least, as we used to do in the old days. I don't recommend doing this right now because it's hard to manage, but you back up to an external drive and then take that drive offsite to a storage location or to your home, which also not recommended. But I mean, people still do that, and it's better than not having offsite backups at all. So that's kind of to point out may not be necessarily what Brian is asking. So in general, Brian, what we're talking about here is one versus the other, local storage versus the cloud storage. So either fully local or in the sense of cloud, fully cloud. But I know most companies may be running some sort of hybrid as well. But in this sense, cloud storage is not just used for backup, but for actual file access too.
Can we, before we go to Peter's question, by the way, Peter, hi. Can we elaborate this a little bit on a hybrid? Because I don't have it in my notes. We never really, we should elaborate. Why don't you kind of talk us through the hybrid?
So a hybrid scenario is where some files reside on a local file server, and then some files reside in the cloud. They're both equally accessible, but because of some software limitations, for example, you may still need to run a local file server. For example, if you're not in Autodesk Collaborate Pro or BIM 360, then you use your Revit work sharing on the local file server, but then you store your other files like accounting, marketing in the cloud on SharePoint or on Google's platform, for example. And the marketing department accesses that, but everybody who's on the project side accesses the local file server.
Gotcha. Thank you. And if you guys have, Brian, if you have a follow-up question, please free to drop it in. But we're going to go Peter's question. He's always throwing us a zinger, right? Mac versus PC. It's the topic. So Peter says, is there any consideration for platform, Mac OS versus Windows, et cetera, in setting up local storage solution? For example, do Macs connect differently, better, worse than PCs might? Good question.
So there are definitely, I guess, both of these platforms have enhanced file connectivity protocols that they use natively. For example, Mac, when it connects to local storage or connects to like a Mac server, which used to be a thing, and now they're kind of slowly decommissioning that, use native Mac protocols to do that, but or native Unix protocols, I should say. But both of these solutions support SMB, which is the standard protocol for file sharing, and so the experience should be very similar on both.
Cool, thank you. All right, let's go into the second part of our. We have three parts. Second part of our discussion, and that is integrating the cloud storage with the design tools, specifically the heavy stuff. Let's talk about service costs. Let's talk about now if a firm's looking. I think a lot of firms are looking to move into cloud. We don't always recommend that as a like definitive way forward. So by the way, we're not on that in that camp necessarily. A lot of times it makes sense. Sometimes it don't. So can we talk through that a little bit?
Well, I think the main consideration for a lot of firms in terms of going to cloud is cost, and this is cost associated with the solution itself. It's also a cost that may be associated with the change, right? And I think those are the biggest costs is, figuring out how to get the solution and make sure that everybody adopts it. And then there's, a cost of, well, we need to train our people and make sure that they're as efficient as they could be. Because they were efficient before, we need to make sure this new solution, they're also as efficient at it. So I think those are kind of all the things that we need to consider when considering either moving to the cloud or, going in a hybrid model or, kind of augmenting local storage with cloud. The biggest thing here, especially for those, for any firm, I think, is how to do work sharing of their BIM models. Right, because it's hard to do it on just or it's almost impossible to do it with just the regular Google or Microsoft. So you have to go. We'll take Autodesk in this example. You will have to go to BIM 360 to make sure that you have seamless cloud work sharing of Revit models, and the cost for that is fairly substantial. I mean, it costs, depending on the size of the firm and how many licenses you get, but on average about $100 per person per month. So if you're a 50-person firm, I mean, it's $5,000 every month. Or sorry, is it? It's $5,000 every month that you're putting into this licensing. Where the math will show that even with all those things that we're talking about keeping the local server and so on, making sure that it's cooled, making sure you have power to it, making sure it's managed and maintained properly, it may still be cheaper to keep the local server in that sense. That's only if you take that financial benefit, right? But, as you take additional benefits in terms of better remote access, better disaster recovery and business continuity, then it starts making more sense. But if you just take the kind of financial perspective, it may not make sense.
Are there any obvious operational gains from going like BIM 360 storage versus keeping it on your server for the Revit files?
It depends what other functionality of Autodesk Construction Cloud / BIM 360 you use. I think in this kind of scenario, we're just talking about Revit work sharing, so there might not be a lot of additional benefit. But one of the biggest ones is collaborating with your consultants, right? So you can have the model up there. You can invite your consultants in to either download the model and work. If they have a license, they can do real-time collaboration with you. If they don't have a license, they can download the model and re-upload it back to that cloud storage, so you can have the most up-to-date model. You can also do stuff like clash detection right then and there. So there's a lot of additional kind of tools and workflow benefits that can be derived. Obviously, Autodesk probably charges you for a lot of those in addition to just the base license, but those capabilities are there.
Did you see the size of the booth in AIA conference in Chicago? The build out that Autodesk did at the trade show floor.
That was huge.
If you guys attended, you would see how big that is. Just incredible. It's just incredible presentation, incredible setup, and so license revenue is good. So keep that in mind. It's costly, yet there's some advantages. You need to know what those are. Have you met a company that regretted going to cloud? Like have
No.
done it,
Well, no,
actually successfully implemented but regretted it?
So if you talk about successfully implemented, then no. I think training goes a long way and making sure people adapt it properly, right? And all of that needs to be part of implementation. We can't just say, all right, let's just go and then see if people like it, right? It has to be a planned out process that probably takes a couple of years, depending on the size of your company, kind of slowly move things in there. Like when we get asked this question by our customers, our first response is, look, we know it works, but your team needs to know that it works. So, we do like a couple of pilot projects. We encourage them. Like we wouldn't even engage in the project unless we set up a pilot project of some sort and encourage them to start their new projects on the new system and see how it actually works. And we can work with Autodesk to get, trial licenses. I think they can be lenient in getting up to 100 days of trials, but just getting your feet wet and kind of running projects on the new platform is the first step. We can't just start moving files up there without people actually buying it.
Very good. So we pilot it with them, and they get a sense of how it works, get feedback from the users, and that way you can make a intelligent decision. Well, as good of a decision as you can make, given that you've already done some work on it. Okay, so what is your recommendation integrating cloud storage with the design tools? Like what's the ultimate how-to?
If you're using Autodesk product, you need to be looking at the BIM 360 platform. And I know Brian just made a comment about, Collaborate Pro not being approved for government work. That could be true. I think there's always, I think all of these cloud platforms, especially the ones that are fairly new, have to go through some growing pains and certification in terms of, ISO standards and other security standards that are compliant with the government. But eventually you'll be there, right? And then, what was my question? Oh yeah, so Autodesk, right?
Stay with us, my friend. Stay with us,
man. It's live. So Autodesk, you have to seriously consider BIM 360 because you will not be able to use Revit work sharing. I mean, there's other providers that are offering Revit work sharing in a cloud. Like Ignite used to have it, but they've actually nixed the product since because it doesn't work that well. There's other systems that are hybrid, right? So you have a cloud mothership for storage, kind of like Panzura, or maybe even Moro Data as another competitor to Panzura, where you have the cloud storage and then you have local appliances in your offices that synchronize data back down so that it's much easier to access. So you kind of have that hybrid of on-premise and cloud. So people who are remote can actually access the cloud portion of it as well. You can put like a filer in a service like AWS or Microsoft Azure so that people use it that way. So that's an option as well. But I think the native option of BIM 360 for Autodesk, and then for ArchiCAD, it's BIM Cloud or Teamwork. I think they rebranded that now. Those would be the ultimate recommended solutions down the line.
Gotcha. Let me read you a couple of questions. Let's
Sure.
get serious about Brian's question. So BIM 360 BIM, his question is BIM 360/BIM, Collaborate Pro and Outproof for government work, and also have a number of security issues in terms of operating on client/partner hubs where your permission can be revoked at any time. More of a general statement. So I guess that's a statement. Have you seen that impact?
Yeah, I mean, that could be a concern. But as I mentioned, I know that Autodesk is working towards getting all the certifications and make sure they're approved as a government, as a government provider. And at least my conversations with Autodesk reps and other Autodesk resellers, that is the case. So we'll follow up on that and just see where that's at.
All right, Peter's question. Our studio is using ArchiCAD, which is its own teamwork structure for collaborative project work, and utilizes either a locally hosted server or a subscription server as a service, which is remote. So separate from a cloud or NAS/local system. Are you familiar with ArchiCAD system, and do you have any thoughts on what server solution is better? Very specific question. Very good. Love it.
Okay. Yes. So in terms of familiarity, yes, we are familiar. And in terms of what we're talking about, integrating with your design tools, that's exactly was my point. Is if you're using ArchiCAD, you want to use BIM Cloud/Teamwork, preferably. So if you don't want to host it on premise, right? If you don't have all your other files on premise, then you'd want to get the license from the ArchiCAD or Graphisoft to their hosted cloud version and utilize it that way. And then what the firms we work with are doing is, so that only allows you to host the project file or model file. So you need to augment that with a solution like Google Drive or Microsoft OneDrive to store all the other files in a cloud if you want to go completely serverless. If you want to go on-premise, then you need to use a more robust device, I think, to host the BIM cloud infrastructure. So just to kind of send just a NAS system would not work. You'd need, a full-fledged Windows server with all the licensing, which can cost you some money to implement.
Yeah, Peter, if you have follow-up questions, feel free to drop it in there. Question from Norma. Thank you, Norma. I'm a freelancer. I'm reading the question. I'm a freelancer offering technical design services in Revit. I have done the work doing a Dropbox back forth. Yuck. I've also done VPN, though not Revit, not for Revit. I just keep my own BIM 360 Collaborate Pro license. It is a cost $120 a month or so for a single seat, but worth it. Just part of the cost of doing business.
Yeah, so I guess that's just a comment. I think Norma is following up with that she loves it. It gives her quick access, powerful access to client Revit models, and real-time collaboration. And that's what we're kind of talking about. Thank you, Norma, for that comment. It makes work, especially with consultants, more efficient on the BIM 360 platform. If you're talking Autodesk, same thing for ArchiCAD and Teamwork, makes your work with consultant and collaboration with consultants more efficient.
Yeah, so Norma just adds it. I love it. It gives me quick, efficient, and powerful access to my clients' Revit models and allows us real-time collaboration all at the same time. It also allows me to work with firms that are over the country in the virtual world, all over the country. Sorry. I've been doing this since 2019 and highly recommend it. Thank you, Norma. Appreciate that. Okay, moving into the next section of our conversation, last section, but probably key. Well, very important, mapping workflows. Okay, so let's talk about synchronizing mapping workflows for cloud for those who are moving or have moved into cloud. I think that's what we meant here. So can you talk a little bit about synchronization, setting up projects, some of the challenges and limitations, or some of the advantages maybe?
Well, I think, people are so used to setting up projects in local storage where you basically have like a template file that you can just go in, copy that file on your server, change the file, change the name of the folder, and you're basically good to go. I think it's a little more advanced. There's some additional steps that you have to do in the cloud environment, especially if you're, for example, if you're in BIM 360 Collaborate Pro, you can still set up, actually they have a feature where you can set up project templates and kind of copy those through your work, so your workflow becomes more efficient. But you basically need to have a person that goes in there and creates a project. And then, if you're only storing the models in BIM 360, then you need to have, that person also set up projects either on your local storage if you're in a hybrid kind of environment, or in your Google or OneDrive or Dropbox as well. And then kind of making sure that people know where to go, that, models live here, and then the other project files live here, is part of kind of adjusting your workflow as well.
Okay. So let's talk about process documentation. You said the cloud migrations can take, a fair amount of time, up to 2 years, sometimes maybe. How important is documenting processes, and how? Because we know it's significant. It's very, very important to make sure like people know how work is done in your organization, and there's a knowledge base. But you had a specific recommendation you've seen companies implement successfully on documenting processes. What would that look like?
Well, it's other companies implementing, and it's us implementing it ourselves as well, right? So eating your own dog food, as they say. So I think our recommendation of documenting any new process, but especially a process that may deal with technology, is you have a person go through the process, and there's free tools that can help you record your screen. So you go through the process and record the screen. Make sure that, you can, I guess, if you do something wrong, all of that is on the recording, so that when you put together the documentation from that recording, you can actually outline those things as well. Hey, don't click here because this is wrong, and so on. So once you have that video, you would then have a person go through, whoever created the video, or it could be somebody else, kind of go through the video and make sure they understand what the video is showing. And then they put together a step-by-step set of instructions with screenshots from the video. So basically, in the end, we have a knowledge base article that kind of walks us through the process step by step. It has all the screenshots in there. And then we have a video as part of that too, and it's linked in that knowledge base article as well. So anybody who needs to do that process the next time can kind of have multiple ways of learning the process, because some people are better at just following directions. Some people need to view it on the screen in the form of a video. So this kind of covers both of those and makes it easier to adopt the process.
Love it. Do you store it, and how do you organize it?
So if you're using a service, again, Microsoft or Google or Slack, for example, it depends. I guess it depends what your tool set is. But for us, we're using Microsoft Teams, and we're a Microsoft shop. Excuse me. So we are storing all of this within Microsoft Teams. We have a specific channel for training and knowledge bases, and we're storing all of those in there. And then there's a link that links it into our client management system. So for each client, we basically add those links in to make sure that there's knowledge base articles that are associated with those customers, and they're linked back to Microsoft Teams.
So that could be kind of similar for an architect, where projects have individual knowledge base articles. Does it make sense in that sense?
One more time.
So, because in our case, our clients have individualized knowledge base articles based on their environments and whatnot. Like for architects, would it make sense for each project to have its own knowledge base? So it's not necessary at that level.
I don't think it's that necessary, because we're talking about company processes.
Got it.
Right.
Yeah.
So basically, it's each section or each department should have their own kind of process database or their own process notebook where all these things come in.
Gotcha. All right. Peter had a question. Are you going to get into comparing cloud storage solutions? Seems like the basic premise is similar across Dropbox, Google Drive, OneDrive, SharePoint, but the implementation, particularly how files are accessed, differs. I like to have files synced locally on my Mac, and the way OneDrive manages that is perhaps typically Microsoft is a little clunky and complicated.
Well, no cloud solution is going to be better for a Mac than iCloud. Unfortunately, iCloud is not a fully business platform. So I think in general, right, as Peter, you've pointed out, Dropbox, Google Drive, OneDrive, we can throw Box in the mix, ShareFile, all of these solutions have very similar capabilities, and it's a matter of preference and how you like the user interface that changes. But OneDrive, although it may seem clunky, may work better than a lot of other ones on the Mac just because of how it integrates into a Finder, and it's not a separate drive. Some people may like a separate drive like Google's, where it's a G drive all the time, and that's how that integrates. So, it all depends on preference. In general, though, all these services offer very similar functionalities where you can sync your files down to your computer. You can collaborate in real time with your colleagues, especially, if you're in Microsoft and you use a Microsoft Office, you can do that real time. If you're in Google and you're using, Google Sheets or Google Docs, very similar workflow there. And then at the same time, if you're syncing down, that will not offer file locking for any of your architecture programs. So you cannot open AutoCAD file on two computers. Well, actually, you can open AutoCAD file on two computers because they've sunk down, make changes to it, and then as they sync back up, one of them is going to overwrite the other, so the other changes will get lost. So there's something to be said about using those with architecture tools, but outside of that, they all have very similar properties.
All right. Thank you. All right, guys, if you have any last minute questions, we're going to wrap up in about 2 minutes here, 3 minutes. If there's a question, we could stay for a little bit longer, but other than that, we really appreciate you guys jumping on and listening. If you have questions that come up afterwards, or you're watching a recording, get in touch with us, and with your specific question, we're happy to help. We're at getarchit.com. Just go contact us and drop a line. So outside of that, we're on Facebook and on Instagram as well. Hit us up there. Outside of more questions coming, we could just say that if any other, I'm just kind of looking, make sure there are no questions, and I'm not disappointing people by disconnecting while there's a question in the process being asked. Okay, so I think we're good. I think we can call this a day. Boris, any last minute parting wisdom to be shared?
Well, I think every firm should, if they haven't already considered cloud or are not currently in a hybrid environment, should start looking at cloud, as that is the solution that is going to move us forward, right? It's basically the 21st century versus the server, which is the 20th century. So looking into those things and kind of start thinking about it, not necessarily going there right away, is something that everybody should do.
All right, Boris. I saw you peeking at questions. We agreed pre-recording. You're not going to do that. You got to stay. You got to stay with the audience. You can be looking at the questions. Peter asked if I'm a bow hunter. No, Peter, I'm not a bow hunter. I'm a bow hunter pretender. And on that note, we want to wish you guys a fantastic rest of the week. Thank you very much for watching. Much love from Arc IT. If you need help with IT, you know who to call. Be well. Stay well. See you next time.
See you, everyone. Have a great rest of your week.